this is kind of my favorite part of Brainstorm Tech. I'm very, very excited about this. This is what we're calling Unicorn Idol. For those who've been here before, we have had Startup Idol for years, for so many years that we called it Startup Idol. We are about to have 5 fantastic companies pitch. I want to first start by meeting our judges. They're going to come out into those chairs. Come on out, judges. From Comcast Ventures, Amy Banse. Yay, clap, clap. From Foundry Group, Brad Feld. And from Greycroft Partners and something called the NBA, David Stern.
Yay!
Okay, everybody, I'm going to come down here a little bit. This is how this is going to work. For years, we've done this with seed stage companies that you've never heard of, and we've tried to give them, a little bit of interest and get them a little bit of pub. These companies have all raised venture capital, institutional venture capital funding. The only rule to it was they all had to have been valued at less than $100 million in their last round. They were all nominated by venture capital firms that I asked over the last couple of months. What's going to happen is after the pitches, after the judges make some comments or ask a brief question to the entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs, if they ask you a question, you have 30 seconds. And even if you're in the middle of a sentence, you're going to get cut off. They'll make their pitches. There'll be comments. At the end of this, you, the audience, are going to get asked to vote on which company you believe is most likely to someday be a billion-dollar company. There'll be text. You'll use your phone, so make sure you have them. There'll be numbers up there for you to text. So I think we're ready to start. So our first contestant from Axion Systems, Natalya Brikner. Right there.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. Natalya Brikner from Axion Systems, where we build propulsion for satellites. When many people think about space, they think about the Hubble telescope, or they think about communicating with other intelligent beings, or they think about traveling at warp speed to the Alpha Quadrant of the Milky Way galaxy. But when I think about space, I think about the immense impact it has on our lives here on Earth. Already today, across diverse industries, companies like Shell and Monsanto and the military rely heavily on satellites, and others, such as Google Maps and Dish TV, would obviously be nothing without them. But fortunately, today, thanks to Moore's Law and the advent of the small satellite, one no longer needs to pay $1 billion to manufacture and launch a satellite the size of a school bus. Rather, these small satellites, the size of shoeboxes, are on the verge of opening up access to space to hundreds of industries, to millions of people, to you, to me, not just Shell and Monsanto. And they have the potential to impact the world in a profound way. Images from swarms of small satellites monitoring oil fields and power plants and city lights can teach us about GDP and poverty levels in ways we've never known before. And with small satellites, we can predict, monitor, and respond to natural disasters like wildfires. And small satellites can help us connect everyone on the globe to the internet, to doctors, to schools, and to one another. But I did mention that small satellites are on the verge of making all of these visionary applications a reality. There's actually one huge problem. There's no propulsion for small satellites. Some of the biggest challenges a small satellite will face without propulsion are that it can't stay in orbit and will turn into a fiery ball of aluminum as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, and it can't get to where it needs to go. To really drive this point home and give you some numbers, say you wanted to maintain a group of 100 small satellites in a low orbit for 10 years. You're doing imaging of the globe. To do that without propulsion would cost you $200 million more than it would with propulsion. So without these abilities, without propulsion, small satellites just don't stand a chance. Or they didn't until now. My co-founder and I developed a new type of ion source during our PhDs at MIT. Together with our stellar team of engineers and our strong and involved board of advisors with deep industry experience, we've turned this ion source into the solution to this problem. We pioneered a new type of propulsion system for small satellites. And all of the magic happens here in the next slide in the thruster chip. Ions are expelled from these thruster chips on the back of small satellites, and the satellites are propelled in the opposite direction. The systems that we develop at Accion based on this technology are safe, small, and inexpensive. But probably the real kicker is that we're not limited to small satellites. We can scale these up to address satellites of every size. One of our key advantages is our propellant. Our propellant is so safe that we can ship our systems fully fueled. Even students can integrate them onto satellites, and we've already been approved for launch. Our other key advantage lies in our manufacturing process. So we did away with the serial, bespoke methods of traditional aerospace, and we learned from other industries. Today, we make everything in batches like computer chips, and can currently manufacture 90 thruster chips in one run. With our current product line, we can address an initial market of $45 million this year. Since raising our seed round 6 months ago, we've brought in $3.1 million in contracts and are working on the paperwork for another $4.2 million. The total satellite industry last year was nearly $200 billion. My team has recognized a really unique opportunity in the aerospace industry. The incumbents can't keep up with this shift to small satellites. They're trying to shed their manufacturing plants, their labor forces, and their overhead to take advantage of all of these breakthroughs in electronics and manufacturing, but they just can't keep up. So at Accion, we'll start with satellite propulsion, we'll become a force to be reckoned with, and then we'll keep going. So with that, thank you. I'm Natalya Brikner from Axion Systems, where we're solving some of the world's toughest problems with hard science.
Fantastic. All right, so a quick comment, and if you have a question, kind of signal me, but only if it's a really important question. Amy, start with you.
So I love the vision of a company that is looking to make satellites available, to a lot of people, small and medium-sized businesses as well as large businesses, a household item. I guess my question is, who are your initial customers, and how many people really do want to launch satellites in a year?
Okay, I'm going to actually let you answer that really quick. Who would be your customers? Answer quickly.
Everyone from governments to Planet Labs to folks in India.
Fair enough. Brad.
Natalya, this is just a perfect example of why MIT is so much better than Stanford.
I agree.
David.
This is extraordinary in terms of climate, weather, and perhaps the Mexicans would like to use it to track down Mr. Guzman.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
no kidding.
Natalya, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next up, from Mark43, co-founder and CEO, Scott Crouch.
Thank you, Dan. I'm Scott Crouch from Mark43. In 2013, there we go. In 2013, there were over 1.1 million violent crimes in the United States. Over 14,000 of those were homicides. Back when I was a junior at Harvard a few years ago, we decided that we would start taking a look at how we can make our community safer using smarter data collection methods and better analysis. And what that really led into was a deep dive into the public safety systems that power our first responders. And what we found was that they suck pretty terribly. It's Windows 95 style software. It looks exactly like this. User experiences that would make you cringe. They're running databases that are so old. I think they run FoxPro or something like that. And what we were finding was that around 40 to 50% of a police officer's shift was taken up doing reporting when they should be back out on the streets. And so what we really decided to do, and people called us crazy for it, was completely reinvent the way our first responders interact with software. And so what we did is we brought together a team of amazing engineers, designers, product people from places like the United States military, Cyber Command, enterprise and consumer sectors, and we went out on the streets. We spent over thousands of hours actually out there with bulletproof vests, with police officers as they made arrests, as they made chases. We worked with homicide units, gang units, narcotics, vice, sexual assault, every single type of police unit you can imagine. We worked with them to really understand what a police officer in 2015 needs to be a really effective cop. And what that turned into was the Mark43 platform. With over 1,000 requirements in its minimum viable product, we do everything from reinventing the way a police officer takes a report on the streets to how a detective investigates crime and uses analysis tools to actually combat groups like gangs and human traffickers, and then shares that information seamlessly with other law enforcement agencies across the country. And by designing this system actually on the streets with those officers, we made it so they could use it in their cars, and so they could get potentially life-saving insights in real time. And since we were able to put this in an FBI-compliant cloud and make it extremely configurable, we made it so that our platform could scale very well. And so the immediate value out of our system becomes apparent. When you can dramatically reduce the amount of time that our first responders are spending on paperwork, we can put them back out on the streets. And we can also lower their overtime expenses. And when you combine this effective increase in staffing with really high quality and really powerful crime analysis tools, what you'll begin to see is a reduction in crime. And so now, I'm sure what you're all asking is, why would anyone invest in a company that sells to government? It sounds horrible, slow sales cycle, all that normal stuff. Well, really, the truth is in the model. If you look at it, there are over 17,000 police departments in the United States and tens of thousands more worldwide that we would ethically work with. And when you look at how much they're spending every single year on software and software-related services, it's around $20 to $30 billion. And really, they're spending it on companies that suck, right? These are companies that haven't changed their software in decades. They're pulling in billions of dollars of revenue, and their departments hate them. They want a new player in the space. And so that's where we come in. We reduce a lot of the barriers to adoption. We don't charge those large upfront costs. We charge a yearly subscription model. And what you'll see is our contracts can range anywhere from the tiniest of tiny departments at around $50,000 a year to the largest departments in the world at tens of millions of dollars a year. And what you really need, though, is network effects. This industry has some of the strongest network effects out there. And so if you can get a department or a city that's going to trust you to actually launch your system and then spread it, you're golden. And that's where our critics said we would fail. They said it would take us around 10 to 15 years to find a major city that would actually work with us. Well, they were wrong. This year, we'll launch with over 15,000 officers across 35 law enforcement agencies in the District of Columbia. We will effectively be their primary system for everything from arrests, incidents, investigations, and sharing that data within those agencies. And we will change the way that law enforcement is done in the nation's capital. Already, we're seeing that we can reduce the amount of time it takes to do all their reporting by up to 60%. And so after DC, the pipeline's quite considerable. We have departments ready to go right afterwards. But as I wrap up, one of the things I really want to touch on is, what's our vision past law enforcement? Really, what we're concerned about at Mark43 is creating this concept of the safer city of the future. And what that involves is going back to all these old antiquated systems and reinventing them. So next up, we're going to tackle a system that hasn't been redone in almost 30 years, 911 dispatch. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I've been asked to come up here because there was video problems. I'll start with you, Brad. Start in the middle.
My enthusiasm for this rises as long as you can promise me that the guy that pulls me over for a speeding ticket no longer spends like 10 minutes filling out a piece of paper.
Can you? So that's a quick, can you?
Yeah, so the reason they actually do that is they're not trying to intimidate you. They're literally just waiting for their software to work.
David.
Impact of the video equipment on cops making arrests and stops? What's the impact on you?
Yeah, so that ties directly into our system. So whenever you take an arrest report, it auto-links into all the on-officer camera that's actually taken from them.
Amy.
Is this a complete overhaul of existing systems, or does it supplement what they already have?
It's a complete overhaul. If we're going to do really good data analysis down the road, we have to completely overhaul the way they collect that data in the first place.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Next up, from Area 1, co-founder and CEO, Oren Falkowitz.
All right. Patrick Ewing, best basketball player ever?
Close.
Oh, man. All right.
Try Bill Russell.
Before we begin, I just want to poll the audience. How many people in this room have been directly, either personally or at a company they work with or for, have been impacted by a cyber attack? If you could raise your hands. Wow, that's pretty shocking, right? You know, security companies and security thought leaders for the last couple of years have liked to say there are two types of companies, those who have been hacked and those who don't yet know that they've been hacked. But over the last year or so, through public disclosures and great media reporting like we've seen in Fortune on the front page, cyber attacks have been front and center, causing massive damage to people and leaving no company or no person immune to this problem. The challenge that people face is, what is it that is at stake, right? For companies like Target, it's brand reputation. For companies like RSA, it's IP theft. For companies like financial institutions, it's loss of credit card data. All of these have financial losses, and in some extreme cases, it can even be physical destruction, as the case of Saudi Aramco, the Iranian nuclear plant at Natanz. But the reality is we live in a world where today we don't learn about these attacks until it's too late to do something about it, right? The statistics are that it's over 200 days after an attack has begun before companies learn about it at a point where it's too late to change that outcome, right? And so we attempt to solve that because we know that phishing is the root cause of this problem. And to do that, what we want to do is change the angle of vision. And if you're not familiar with what phishing is a technique used by attackers to elicit users within your company to click on a link, download a file, or visit a website. And it's the primary method. And in fact, in the 227 major cyber attacks in the United States, 220 of them last year began with phishing. It takes less than 90 seconds from the time the first message is sent for a user to click and to infect your entire company. And campaigns that send only 10 messages have a 90% success rate of one user clicking. So I want to introduce you to Dolores, right? Dolores is a very smart woman. She's done all the IT compliance training at your company. She's technically savvy, but she has two fundamental problems. She loves to click on anything that comes to her, like most of us, it's inevitable. And secondly, she wants her data anytime, any place, anywhere. And this notion of a perimeter, the castles that we've been building with our existing IT infrastructures, doesn't make any sense. And so you're probably asking yourself, man, we've made so much investment in security. Why are we not seeing better results? Why is it taking us over 200 days to detect that these attacks have happened? Why are we having such massive impacts? And why can't we do anything about it? Well, to solve that problem, you need to change your angle of vision. And probably while I've been talking, you've thought, man, this is probably what this attacker looks like. Some sort of SEAL Team 6 commando. Maybe he's like half Mossad. He's got awesome goggles and this whole thing. But in reality, this is what attackers look like. This is the work that I did for the US government for 7 years. And attackers have one strength, which is tools and weapons, and one giant weakness, which is their Achilles heel, which is that they're human, that they expose themselves through behaviors on the World Wide Web that are totally predictable. In fact, I didn't realize this as I was getting dressed, but I'm even wearing the same shirt that I am in this picture, which is like, super embarrassing, right? So the angle of vision matters. The security industry has been focused on tools and weapons and microscopic details that exist within networks and are incapable of solving the problem in a fundamental way. And Area 1 takes that vision into the wild to identify not the techniques and not the payloads that people are delivering, but the patterns of delivery and where these things come from. And so we do that first by sensing, identifying attacks at their source, learning through a mix of patented algorithms plus human-aided curation that allows us to achieve high accuracy and almost near perfect accuracy, and then offering companies opportunities to change outcomes, defeat mechanisms, notification, quarantining, disabling, and blocking, and doing that all in the cloud, in the wild, so we're consistent with a world where there's no perimeter. Just in the last couple days, these are the you can't see the industries, but we've identified attacks against robotics companies, against universities, think tanks, all the major law firms in the United States, as well as a variety of technology companies. And the key that's amazing is 21 days in advance. This clicker sucks.
You're out of time. David.
Wow.
You're up first.
Why isn't Microsoft coming to eat your lunch and give you a new shirt?
Why isn't Microsoft coming to eat your
No.
lunch? Yeah.
Well, this is a very challenging problem. I'm not sure why Microsoft would be the one to eat our lunch. 5 years ago, there were 5 key players in the computer security industry. In the last year, venture capitalists have invested in over 230 companies. Clearly, there's something fundamentally wrong with the traditional solutions, and we have a unique approach given our expertise and the angle of vision we have.
All right, Brad.
Actually, it could just be that we're all sheep and we're investing in what everybody else is investing in. But the serious question is, the slide that you had that's the description of what you're doing is nice buzzwords, but I didn't get what is unique about the approach you're taking, because anti-phishing has been a problem that lots have gone after. So what's fundamentally...
You get one sentence to respond.
Yeah, so anti-phishing has not been solved. It's done with training, ineffective, or it's done with spam, which is a volume problem. It's not a targeted problem, and the results prove, otherwise.
Would this have saved Sony and Target?
Absolutely, and Target and Anthem.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Oren. I appreciate it. Next up, from Nylas, co-founder and CEO, Michael Grinich.
All right, thanks. So before I get started, I want to ask the audience a quick survey. So I'd like you to think of your favorite app. So for a show of hands, how many people have used that app today? OK, how many people have used it 3 times today? Keep your hand up. 5 times? 10 times? All right, so a different question. How many of you have checked your email in the last 15 minutes? OK, so pretty much everyone's hands go up, right? So I think it's pretty clear that we all use email, and we use it constantly and quite heavily. But I believe there's actually something really profound about email that's been overlooked by almost everyone. And this is the story I'm going to tell you today, and this is the story of Nylas. So this started for me a few years ago. I was studying at MIT and spent some time working at Dropbox. One of my projects there was the Dropbox API platform, and that really got me thinking about the future of data. During that summer, I went to the dentist just to get my teeth cleaned, and the dentist took some x-rays. Now, when I was on my way out, I asked them for a copy of the x-rays. And I was expecting the dentist maybe to print them out or use one of these like HIPAA-compliant systems or something. But he didn't do either of those. He didn't use Dropbox. He didn't use some special system. He just emailed them to me. And that's when something clicked for me. I realized that email is the database of your life. Email is full of the most important and the most personal data out there. It's the first app that people reach for when sending things to each other. My email personally has over 10 years of history. It's the database of my life. But as I thought about this some more, something started bothering me. I looked around, and I couldn't find very many email startups. There were only a handful of people building on top of email, which seemed really strange. So I started working on my own email app, and through that process, figured out why. Turns out building on email is hard, like really, really, really hard. It has this perfect storm of technical challenges. First, you need to integrate with this archaic system. Email was designed 30 years ago. The protocols really haven't changed since then. Second, users have a huge amount of data. So on day one, you have to scale. And third of all, as we saw earlier, most people use email constantly throughout the day, so there's this super high bar for performance. Each of these problems are individually hard, but together, they meant that only really the big companies could build great email apps. Hence, no email startups. So fortunately, I really like hard problems, and this is what I decided to fix. I pitched this idea to a few people, including some VCs, some of which I think are in the room right now. And many of them said it was impossible and, quote, would never work, which I thought was like a really good sign. So 2 years later, this is Nylas. It's the next generation email platform. Nylas makes it super easy to build email apps, and it's compatible with the existing systems like Gmail and Microsoft Exchange. It's free to get started and handles all those hard things I mentioned earlier, including abuse, security, and scaling. Nylas is a modern API platform that works with the existing systems. It's like Stripe or Twilio, but for building email apps. So what kind of apps are built on Nylas? Well, here's 3 quick examples. The first is an app for sales reps that automates about 90% of their day. It's kind of like this super tool that lets them convert more leads and close more deals throughout their day. The second is a recruiting tool that deeply integrates with email, and it shares threads across the recruiting team, so you never lose a candidate again. Pretty awesome. And the third app is for anyone. It's a virtual assistant which can take care of scheduling meetings and more. I want to stress that Nylas and these apps are powerful because they augment the things that people are already doing. This isn't some new world order. Under the hood, it's still email. I mentioned 3 examples, but it turns out the world still runs on email. And most of the email-heavy businesses out there are also the ones that have been neglected by the software community for years. They kind of have the worst tools. Nylas opens this for developers. And you don't have to just take my word for it. Ryan Hoover, who runs Product Hunt, tweeted this last year. People are searching for email apps every day. We announced Nylas less than a year ago, and this is really just the beginning. We've had a tremendous response from developers, and we really believe that email is the next great data platform. There's a massive untapped opportunity here for apps and services built on top of email. This is also my first time at the Fortune Tech Brainstorm conference. If you're excited about email or have ideas for things you want built, please come talk to me afterward. I'd love to meet you. And of course, you can email me. So that's Nylas. I'm Michael Grinich, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the judges.
Fantastic. Amy, let's start with you this time.
Yep, I completely agree that email is broken. I'm going to ask an unpopular question, which is how do you make money?
So we sell this as infrastructure. It's kind of like AWS. So we run servers, people build apps on top of us, and from day one, they can start building features that their users actually want instead of like scaling infrastructure and trying to solve all those problems I put up earlier.
Brad?
Feels like you and Area 1 should spend some time together to make sure that the phishing capability is enabled within this.
Yeah, we actually do like a lot of...
If I want to do a phishing attack, I can.
Absolutely, and there's stuff that we can do in terms of limiting the kind of data that developers can get access to, so we can kind of stop some of those phishing attacks early on.
Are you going to go roaming in my lifeline?
That's right.
There we are. Thank you very much.
And we take that very seriously,
I think that was good. I liked where you ended that. Fantastic. Last but not least, and we went alphabetically, last but not least, from Mattermark, CEO Danielle Morrill.
Hello, I'm Danielle Morrill, CEO and co-founder of Mattermark, and we are organizing the world's business information. I have many of my customers in the audience, and they're probably wondering, wait a second, I thought you guys were building a deal tracking tool for VCs. And 2 years ago, that's where we started out. But in building that, we discovered a much more interesting problem. It's actually really hard to Google for business questions and get useful answers. Just try it. It's one of my favorite demo games, Stump Google. Let me give you some examples. So which companies raised a venture capital round last year? These results aren't great. They actually don't give you the list of companies. So if you're an analyst or an associate who's supposed to actually make that list, it's a lot of work. So let's try the news view instead. I think there's 142,000 results in there, so maybe we can have that poor analyst go into Google News every day and pull all of those out. That's actually some people's jobs right now. And if you're not using Mattermark yet, I'd love to talk to you after this. So instead, why don't we just do a quick search in Mattermark? We have a funding history view. You can put in some dates and just get all the rounds. So we actually have the number of rounds, over 2,000. And even cooler, we can export this to a spreadsheet. So that means all the time you were spending collecting the data, you can now spend analyzing the data. And because you're probably a Harvard MBA, that's a much better use of how smart you are. So what else can we do? We've got spreadsheets. And the really sick thing about spreadsheets is they're kind of the state of the art. You know, you might be thinking, oh, I use other tools to answer these questions right now. I use Venture Source. I use Capital IQ. But the thing is, stuff always still ends up in a spreadsheet. And if you're not an investor, if you're a closer, a professional salesperson, maybe your company depends on the revenue that you bring in, it's kind of sick that you're making spreadsheets all the time. It's not a very good use of someone who can actually bring in revenue. So let's take a sales example. So I want to find companies with at least 500 employees in Boston. That's my territory in my company. So we get some results, but really quickly I dug into these. 2 of them are PDFs. They're all out of date. And with Mattermark, we can just do this search in a couple of seconds. The value here is also that these are updated on a monthly basis. So when companies cross some key threshold, if you're a closer with that territory, it's really important to know exactly when that happens. And these are also ranked by a bunch of other metrics, so you can prospect based on more than just how many people work in the company. So spreadsheets are great. I don't think they're going away anytime soon, but I do also believe that people are recreating data sets in a lot of other places too. Salesforce is a great example. So you might be thinking that your Salesforce install is so unique. Somehow you have unique data, but we're all actually just recollecting the same business cards. It's really sad. I mean, probably 50 of us are going to go enter the same person into a CRM after this trip. We also have developer tools. So if you're building custom solutions inside your company, we have an API. This is actually our fastest growing and highest revenue per customer piece of our business. And I know a little bit about selling APIs. I was the first employee at Twilio and got the first 100,000 or so customers there. So The cool thing about APIs is I don't know what developers will build with Mattermark, but I can't wait to find out. So to summarize, how did we get from venture capital deal sourcing to here? We discovered people want to get facts and relationships out of search. They just don't want to search content strings anymore. They need real information to make decisions. And that's exactly what we do. We're pulling in data from a whole bunch of sources. It's coming from third parties, regulatory filings, news. We're calling companies up, getting their data, pulling it in. And what's the thing with data, right? It doesn't matter how much data you have if you can't do something cool with it, if you can't actually drive business results with it. And so that's what our products do. They let you actually do something powerful. Customers love it. We're growing about 20% month over month. We've gone from 3 to 40 employees in the past 2 years. And because we started out focused on VC, you might be wondering, well, when is this company actually going to go and get those other customers? And the good news is almost half of our customers are now in these other use cases. So we're really just getting started selling into a market that is a lot bigger. So just to summarize, 2 years, we've collected $3 million of revenue. We've got bookings all the way out into pretty much the end of 2017. Not only that, but now that we're professionalizing sales and focusing on customer success, we have negative revenue churn, so we can go back to all these early adopter customers, and we've solved problems for one person. Now we can solve problems for the whole organization. And finally, because it's really cool, there's going to be a whole new set of questions we can answer. One of Google's values is that they have every question you've ever asked. We're going to have every business question. I'm Danielle Morrill, CEO and co-founder of Mattermark, organizing the world's business information. Thank you.
Amy, let me start with you. There's a reason we'll go in this order.
I've used it, and I like it. I'm curious as to who the other 50% of the customers are.
Yep, sales, biz dev, merchant banks, investment
bankers.
Large
businesses, small businesses?
Large, generally large businesses with growing sales teams.
Okay.
David.
Don't make too much noise. You might wake up Bloomberg and Thomson Reuters.
Brad, this is one of your portfolio companies, so take this with some sort of grain of something. What do you want to say, though? Probably something.
Teal is my favorite color.
Fantastic. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. Thank you, Danielle. Okay. It's time now to vote. Take out your phones. Everybody, oh, I can't step in front of this. Take out your phones. You are going to text. It's going to be up there. TECH, T-E-C-H, 2015 to 22333. You will get once you do this, it says it, you will see up there, you'll get an instant message back, at which point you will vote and you'll key it in. Enter 1 for Axion Systems, enter B for Mark43, enter C for Area 1, enter D for Nylas, enter E for Mattermark. 1 vote per device. I don't know if we're really checking, but we'll be on the honor system here. And please vote. So that's what we're going to do right now. As we do, I want to say we're very grateful to our friends at Herman Miller. You're all sitting in their chairs, but they're also providing the prize for today's Unicorn Idol, the grand prize. The winning company will receive the Metaform portfolio, which I am told is designed for today's hackable office. It's made up of a bunch of lightweight blocks that weigh under 20 pounds that you can move around and set up as you like for informal meetings, a private space, or a collaborative workplace. Did it go away? Yeah, so TECH 2015, and then enter 22333. We are calculating, we are tabulating. That is what we're doing. I don't really have anything I'm supposed to say here. We're good? Oh, I'm coming this way. I lied.
Do we get to see it up here?
That would be actually pretty cool.
Right.
Sorry. What? It's a good television show. I don't know who they are. I didn't get told, but it is going to come up on screen. So here we go. The grand winner is Natalya, Accion. Congratulations. I want to thank all of our Unicorn Idol participants. I want to thank all our judges.